Senator Bigg. Senator Erickson. Here. Senator Moy. Here. Senator Ramsey. Senator Schmidt. Here. Senator Edidiche. Here. Senator Owosu. Here. Senator Andrade Lara. What did he say here? Here. Senator Bejarano. Here. Senator Landis. Here. Senator Nowinski. Here. Senator Overazzi. Here. Senator Stilwell. Here. Senator Alfaro. Here. Senator Christensen. Here. Senator Akintan. Senator Pospischal. Here. Senator Chiati. Here. Senator Sajal. Here. Senator Dole.
All present.
Perfect. Senator Garten.
Roxy.
Senator Sampson. Here. Senator Moyne. Here. Senator Mitchell. Senator Wade. Senator Zelmer. Here. Senator Hoysa. Here. Senator Roebuck. Here. Senator Albright. Here. Senator Rodinez. Here. And then President Cronin. Here. All right. Is there any dissent to the agenda? No? All right, we'll begin with our first presentation, Tobacco 21.
All right. Can you hear me? Yes, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Bockel. I am with the City of Mankato Department of Public Safety. I'm currently a sergeant and I'm assigned to the Detective Division. And we're here to talk a little bit today about Tobacco 21. I am not a part of Tobacco 21 directly. My division, the Detective Division, is responsible for conducting compliance checks when it comes to tobacco purchases and sales throughout the city. So that's really why I guess I was chosen to be here as part of it. But Tobacco 21, it's a national campaign that's aimed at raising the legal age to purchase tobacco to 21, to sell tobacco to 21. And right now, the City Council, Mankato City Council, is looking for feedback as to those folks that would be affected the most by this. So we've had a couple sessions. This is the second one. The first one was with business owners who sell tobacco, and they've sent out surveys, and now we're talking to you folks because obviously the ages from 18 to 20, a lot of those people land here and are students at MSU. We have some surveys that we can pass out to you. We're working with Healthy Mavericks to get the information out to them. And if you guys want to have a way to push this out to students, that would be great too. Again, the City Council is looking for feedback at this point in time. There's also a link, if you go to the City of Mankato's website, it's called the Sound Off link. There's an opportunity for you to, well, really sound off about all kinds of different issues that may be coming up, and right now Tobacco 21 is certainly one of those that they're looking at. A couple things about this. If Tobacco 21 were to be enacted in Mankato, it makes it illegal to sell tobacco products to folks under the age of 21. It would not make it illegal for those that are 18, 19, 20 to possess or use tobacco within the city. So that's something to keep in mind just when you're thinking about this. And the reason is it's not state law at this point. This is just something that is looking to be enacted potentially by the City of Mankato. So that's really the basics of what I'm here to present to you. Is there any questions that you may have for me that I could answer? Again, I'm with the Department of Public Safety, so some of your questions I might not be able to answer if they're more health related and things along that lines, but as far as enforcement, I could maybe help there.
President Cronin?
I'm just wondering if you're aware at all if and when the City Council might be voting on this again? Because I know they had a vote last year, but
Right.
it didn't pass.
Yeah, they did. Right now, so they're in that info gathering stage right now, and I want to believe that they're going to be, actually Adele is our PIO from the city, and maybe you could speak to some of these dates?
Yeah, we're looking to have a public hearing in May or June. So once all the information is gathered and compiled and presented, then each council member will make the decision on however they individually So we'll follow the regular ordinance process.
Thank you.
Senator Erickson?
I was just wondering where you got the survey from.
Bill?
The survey questions were developed focused on just the facts. It's not a scientific survey, it's informal, and it's put out there just because we're not advocating one way or the other. We just want to get input from people, and so can be used to inform. And again, each member will decide which direction they want to go on this.
Senator Zelmer?
Does tobacco 21, like, does the law or the bill, will people who are 18 currently be grandfathered in?
No, not at
No,
this point.
okay.
Right now, it really will focus on the business owners. So they won't be able to sell the folks that are 21 or under the age of 21. So yeah, if somebody were to be 18, 19, or 20, they would not be grandfathered in. At least there hasn't been any type of talk for that at this point.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions for tobacco 21? Senator Erickson?
I mean, I just have a question reading this real quick. The very first question says, are you a retailer who sells tobacco and or nicotine delivery products? And so I answered, no, I'm a student. And then it says, if no, please explain why you don't support tobacco 21.
That was for. Yes, it's a retail.
Oh, okay. I was just so confused. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
No, it should be a subsection of this.
All right, so next we have Students United.
Yeah.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Kayla, for those of you who don't know me. I'm your state chair this year.
I'm delighted to I am the vice chair for this year.
And our treasurer, David Chatu, from Southwest Minnesota State, is sorry he couldn't be here today. He really loves this budget, and he wants me to tell you that he's the one who decided to label the presentation Your Money. And he will be able to answer any questions via email if you have them specifically for the treasurer. But for those of you that don't know, Students United is funded by your student fees. So each year when we do our campus visits in the spring, we go around and like to talk to you about what our proposed budget plan is for the upcoming fiscal year, some of the things that we've done throughout the last fiscal year, answer any questions that you all may have. The way the process kind of works is that our staff and our treasurer, as well as myself and our vice chair, have met to discuss what the finances have looked like throughout the last year, what our projected income is from student fees and things like that, to plan proposed budgets for the delegates and the board to discuss and decide on during our April conference. The delegates are a committee of the board, so they will have the opportunity to look at the budget this year, and really what we want them to focus on, just so you all know if you may be attending as delegates, is what you want our priorities to be. If you want our priorities to be programming or advocacy, what that would look like to you and what maybe some of your hopes are, so that the board can take that into consideration, as well as your recommendations for which budget you like the best when making final decisions on our finances for the next fiscal year. Okay, so 2019-2020 projected reserve amount based off of our proposed budget is a little over $500,000. Our reserves are supposed to give us a 6 months operating cost. So we're good and healthy in the reserves. Our policies say that our operating reserve policy requires Students United to have a minimum of 6 months of average operating costs and reserves. That's just in case there would be a huge decrease in enrollment, or for any reason we weren't able to collect our student fees for functioning process, then we would have a reserve on hold for a 6 months operating period. So just to let you know where that's at. Okay, expenses will be covered through student fee revenue, grant income, and individual giving. So our projected student fee revenue is 61 cents a credit, which is what the board passed last year as our new per credit free, is $905,941.50. Our projected development revenue is $150,000. This is something that's new. This will actually be the projected grant and development revenue at $150,000 will make next fiscal year the first fiscal year that we've been operating without a deficit. So our new Director of Development has worked really hard to look at ways that we can apply for grants and individual giving to really expand our finances and make sure that we're not operating at a deficit. So this is a really great new thing that our new hire, Christina, our Director of Development, has worked really hard on, so we're excited about that. Additional funds, AKA the building fund, is at $130,000. For those of you that haven't been around in a while, you'll know many years ago, a board decided that we needed a whole building for Students United, and then created this separate account to host a bunch of money to eventually buy a building. Boards later decided that us having a building was really unnecessary, and then that just became part of a separate account that acts as like a secondary reserve for us. And then our total expected revenue with all that combined is a little over $1 million. Oh, and our projected expenses is, yeah, a little bit less. So you can see the numbers there. The revenue is what we take in, and expenses are what we're projected to spend. Okay, reserve fund versus the building fund. So there's a little bit of the history. The reserve policy was passed in Students United in 2012. We had no policy at that point about how much money you should have in emergency funds. And the purpose is to provide a sudden increase in expenses, one-time unbudgeted expenses, unanticipated loss in funding, or uninsured losses. The governing authorities and financial policies and the usage, it's never been used. We've never had to use our reserves yet. The former building fund was 2007 to 2013 accumulation, and we plan to buy or build an office building. The 2012 board is what took opposition to this, and there have been no plans to purchase a building since. That purpose is to support student programming, special initiatives, and advocacy efforts. If we were to have any emergency one-time expenses that we hadn't budgeted for, that students hadn't passed, it would come out of that building fund. The governing authorities, the board determines the amount of money we use from that fund. So our board every month approves our finances and looks at them and approves the money that we've spent. And they would also be the ones that would allow us to have access to that building fund. So none of this money would be used regardless without approval of the board of directors. Okay. So this is what the process is looked like. In February, officers and staff drafted proposed budgets, including Students United, operating costs, and our scholarship budget. In March and April, we're getting infinite Senate meetings. That is us being here today. And then this April, the delegates will pass recommended budgets at delegates, and the board passes the final budget process. In May and June, our fee maintenance request goes to the Minnesota Board of Trustees. So last year, we had an increase in the amount of per credit fee that we took in. And this year, we have to go back to Minnesota State and make sure that they reapprove the board's current fee rate that was set last year. So this is not an increase, this is a maintenance. This is making sure that we maintain our current per credit fee. And yeah, that's what that is. So it's a maintenance, not an increase, just so you all know. Okay, budget sections. We have the general and administrative, student programming, and student organizing. Personnel hours are split up between these three categories. So personnel hours are the amount that we pay our full-time staff, and personnel is also how we fund our campus committees. Those 73% of all that money does go into student programming. So oversight of the committees, making sure there's direction, planning our conferences, all of our day-to-day operations. 73% of that goes into student programming. The other general and administrative would be things like our director of operations, handling our HR, talking to our auditor, and student organizing is the campus committees, as well as advocacy day and our federal advocacy. So that's kind of the areas, and those come from the student fee income, grants, individual giving, and the career consortium, which is a fund that we hold. So as a budget breakdown, in the gray we have general and administrative. So this is money that is used for our general and administrative costs. In the blue, we have student programming, so conferences, etc. And then in the green, we have student organizing, advocacy day, campus committee events, and federal advocacy. We just spent a week out in DC 2 weeks ago, and that's that.
Point of information, can you say the actual percentages that are shown there?
Oh yeah, sorry, apologies. So student organizing makes up 31%, general and administrative 42%, and student programming 27%. So fee maintenance requests, this is the board passed a 14-cent fee increase last year. This moved our fee from 47 cents to 61% of credit. The year prior to, the board moved the fee increase from 43 to 47 cents to budget for a director of equity and inclusion position. So a year before last, the board did an increase just to hire our current director of equity and inclusion of year, Saida. I know many of you have met and worked with her. But prior to that, we had not had a fee increase in many years, so we weren't keeping up with the rate of inflation. Because we only did the the rate that our expenses had gone up. Because we hadn't had one in so long, that's what the 14-cent jump was from 47 cents to 61 cents a credit. It's because we hadn't passed a fee increase in so long, other than to specifically budget for the Director of Equity and Inclusion. It had been 10 years. So Minnesota State's Board of Trustees approved the fee increase for 1 year with the expectation that we would come back this year and show the trustees what we did with the increase. To let you know what we did with the increase, the value added was the advocacy conference that I know many of you attended, what was that, like a month ago? Yeah, about a month ago. We had just under 200 students register and huge attendance and really great feedback. We were able to get State Representative Hunter Cantrell, representatives from NCLC, which works on behalf of federal higher education issues in Washington, D.C., to really give students skills. A lot of the feedback that we had heard from students of what they wanted out of this increase was the ability to do their advocacy work at a better level and more consistently. So the advocacy conference was done and able to be held because of this fee increase. More student representation in DC. We doubled the amount of students that we took from DC last year to this year. So before, only the board of directors and officers went. This year we were able to invite all of our campus committee coordinators as well, which was able to allow us to have both more meetings and to spread out into 2 separate groups. So we met specifically with our representatives at the federal level. It also allowed us to pay students based on the new St. Paul hourly wage. Because our office is located in St. Paul, when the St. Paul City Council set the increase to the $15 minimum wage, that applies to us as a nonprofit since that's where we're based out of. They're gradually increasing to $15 an hour, but because we had this increase, if we wouldn't have had it, we actually would have ended up probably having to make cuts because that increase would have been significant for us to pay all of our campus committees and coordinators. So the fee increase allowed us to keep up with the St. Paul City Council decision for hourly wage. And then transportation for students to testify. We've increased the amount. I've been able to testify at the Minnesota State Senate and at the House of Representatives to their higher education, finance, and policy committees and other relevant higher ed committees. So has your vice chair and your treasurer. We were able to do that and travel and get other students to travel to speak in front of your representatives because of this increase as well. So those are just some of the things that we've been able to do. Grant and individual giving. So now that scholarships are in a good place, we're focused on our development efforts. I mentioned this briefly. Christina, who's excellent in grant writing and fundraising, is projecting to develop the deficit between student fees and expenses. So that's where that $150,000 is coming from, as I said before. So you know who our fiscal team is. So ultimately you have the decision makers, which are the board of directors. That is your student body presidents or their appointments. Our key leaders are the fiscal committee and treasurer. So the fiscal committee consists of some board members and the treasurer should too. Key influencers are student delegates. So that's all of you. You really inform the decision, as well as the student budget ambassadors the treasurer should too has been working with on all of our campuses. And our resources are our officers and staff. So myself, Elijah, David, and the staff have worked really hard to try and compile this to reflect the requests of students and what our current projected income and expenses are going to be. So our scholarship programs budget, the board also approves a separate scholarship programs budget, and this budget is funded through donations and endowments, not student fees. So student fees do not pay for the scholarships, to be clear, but we are able to do things like the penny scholarship, which allows students to do advocacy work, could be in DC, could be here, and other significant scholarships that allow a lot of you to be recipients and help out with your tuition, and that comes from individual giving. All Students United Scholarship recipients receive their scholarship funds through this budget. So anyone who has received a scholarship through us in the past or has heard of it or is applying for one, I hope you are, that's what that money will come out of. Another big thing that we did this year was the equity audit. So this was a process required by the strategic plan. The reason we hired a director of equity and inclusion is because a few years ago when we did the strategic plan, students really wanted to emphasize a full-time staff position that was dedicated not just to making sure that our campuses were equitable and inclusive, but that internally we were doing so as well. Part of that strategic plan process with the new staff position was to conduct an equity audit. That was to look at all of our governing documents, our office manuals, our procedures, our hiring processes, absolutely everything that we do, and make recommendations, structural, procedural, and cultural. Our Director of Equity and Inclusion has just finished this resource. It is absolutely amazing. I've watched her work on it all year, and she's met frequently. I've met with her every week for the last many months just to discuss this, and our other officers have been meeting with her as well to inform this process. The recommendations include resource, time and personnel, and money investments in a variety of things, including personnel development, technology, legal, equity and accessibility, to complete recommendations. So a lot of these budget recommendations that we're making for this upcoming fiscal year are coming out of recommendations that were made in the equity audit, so just to get an idea. Our fiscal management plan is Students United has been focused on nonprofit budget best practices and maintaining the highest level of fiscal responsibility. From budget education and recommendations, the organization will implement a new fiscal management system in fiscal year 20. The management system will be quarterly meetings that include the treasurer, executive director, director of development, director of operations to reassess the expenses and revenue of the FY20 budget. What we realized is we're really only looking at our finances when it comes to budget season. And we want to make sure that that's being done more frequently and that students are more informed and there's more transparency in where your student fees are going. So part of that is developing this quarterly system where we look at, examine the finances, and talk to all of you. Recommendations from the quarterly meetings based on evaluating revenue from grants and individual givings will be given to the board. We'll have an opportunity to approve new budget line items. So this will also give us an opportunity to inform the board more adequately for them to make decisions on a regular basis about our finances. So I know that was a lot of information. We'll take any questions that you may have.
Floor's open to questions. Is there any questions?
Or feedback or comments?
Senator Landis.
So just to clarify, the proposal for this year is just to maintain that 61 cents?
Yes.
Okay. I remember last year there were like 3 different budgets and there was a option period, and but this year we're just, you're coming with the one proposal and that's what we're advocating for?
Yes and no. So
okay.
The fee maintenance request will be to the Board of Trustees. So we are only allowed, you all agree on what the fee rate should be, and it's a democratic process, but then we still have to go ask the Minnesota State Board of Trustees to approve allowing us to collect those from students on a per credit basis. So we're requesting that we show all the things that I just explained to you we've done this year with the fee increase, and that they agree to do it again next year and in the following years. We will still be going to the delegates with multiple options for budgets, and we'll still be going asking for as much of their feedback as possible, because even though we're hoping to maintain, and assuming that we will, that 61% fee, we still want your feedback about priorities. So you'll still be looking at different things at delegates and providing a lot of feedback to the board, but the maintenance request will be going to the Board of Trustees. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, also, can I just say, I sent your president a whole website link with our budget. She can distribute that, and you can look at this presentation as well as a bunch of other information about our finances, and that'll be available to you as long as you want it. Have any questions, email me or any of us.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you all for your time.
Our third presenter won't be here until 5, so we'll go on ahead and start with officer reports. Open forum. Is there anybody here for open forum?
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. For those who don't know, I'm David Jones, Vice President of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management here at the university. I just received confirmation just a couple minutes ago. Today, at the Board of Trustees meeting for this month, this morning, they passed the consent agenda, which include the full support for the sports dome, so it's a go. Just wanted to share that with you all, so we'll move ahead from here, but congratulations on this huge change for our campus and a really meaningful change, not only for the campus, but for our community as well. So thank you for all your support for that. The next step for us will be to continue our planning process and go out to an RFP for bid for construction of the facility in probably the next month or so. So I'll pause. Todd's en route, so he'll have good news to hear this. He doesn't know it yet, but any questions folks may have? Awesome. Thank you.
So now we'll go on to officer reports, and we'll start with President Cronin.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Omar. Just some quick updates. Just so everyone is aware, election season for student government begins on Sunday. I know there might have been some confusion around campus because the ISA elections are occurring right now, and I believe their election's being held on Thursday. But just so people aren't getting confused with ISA posters versus student government ones, student government cannot begin campaigning until Sunday. Important too, just to tell your constituents, in case they're wondering, that election is for the International Student Association, which is important to vote to if you're able to, but just so they are aware that it is a different thing, because those times do overlap and it can be confusing for some different students to understand that. As well as just a reminder from Commission Chair Alex Lucere to make sure that if you are running, to be getting your applications in on Engage, as well as having a rules reading. I know that some are being scheduled, but do remember that there are also always the 2 on Tuesdays and Thursdays that the Elections Commission is in the office to hold. So, get those done so that way you're able to be eligible if you are interested in running for next year. I am looking for 2 appointments for 2 different search committees. If anyone's interested, the first one is for the Director of Retention and Recruitment through the Institutional Diversity, and the second one is for the search of the Dean of Students. So both of those, I do need to find anyone interested within the next week or so. So if you would like to serve on the search committee, they both are hoping to be filled by late May, early June. So, it would be important that you're able to commit this time over the next few weeks. I know finals are coming up and stuff, and, people have summer plans, but it would be really great if you are able to, be here through the end of May, or being able to, fully invest into the search, just because they can be a lot of work and it can get overwhelming with everything else in school that you might have going on. As well, tomorrow is the deadline for the extended application period for the Student Government and Barnes & Noble Leadership Scholarship. So if you are interested or have been working on that application, be sure to get it in. In the same light, the applications or nomination forms for the Vic Swanson Friendly Staff Member Award and Dr. Dwayne Teacher of the Year Award were extended till Friday. So make sure that you are telling people, getting nominations in, just because it's great to show appreciation for the people who work here. Speaking of appreciation, I have the Senator of the Month Award for February. I meant to give it out last week, but I just thought with the budget, that was one less thing I needed to think about or have time spent on. But so this award is going to a senator who has really put in a lot of hours over the last few weeks and months. And I think one of the best things about this senator as well is that they really showed how important it is to be a senator to your fellow senators, being in the office, discussing different issues, being that resource, and being willing to have conversations to make an efficient Senate meeting. And so with that, that is why the February Senator of the Month is Senator Bill Landis. And then also, one thing that was passed around that you all might have seen was the layout for the rest of the term's senator reports. And so that was something that I had pieced together just because I wanted people to be aware of what is coming up and when you have your reports. If you are looking at it and it looks like there might be some different dates that you signed up for, the original document that was passed around had included on accident days that is actually next year's Senate meeting. offered 87, so I'm sure you could go and talk about something, but it won't count for a senator report. So if you have any issues or if there's any changes you'd like to modify, please speak to myself or Vice President Omar, just because as you can see, there's a lot on every day, and we don't want to like get backed up on that last meeting having like 10 reports or something, because it is only an hour long. So making sure that if you have an issue, please speak to us beforehand or try and switch with a different senator, because it won't be as lenient as it's been in the past just to postpone your senator report to the next week, because we're not trying to, you know, do them all on one day. And with that, I yield. Any questions?
All right, then I'll go ahead with mine. Today's senator reports, there has been some changes. Senator Mitchell and Senator Redenis will not be presenting today, so if you guys want to cross that off. As well as the one-on-ones, I have collected a few more people from Nathan's list, and I've reached out to you guys to fill out a doodle, so if you guys just want to get back to me if the times work. And office hours are due March 27th, next Wednesday. So, and I also emailed you guys the layout for the other dates as well. Any questions? All right, we can continue on. We'll start with our first senator report, Senator Moy and Erickson.
Hi. So our center report today, as being College Valley Health and Nursing, is we just wanted to do kind of like a little overview of the nursing program. Questions come to us as a Senate about the nursing program all the time, and we just felt that even as senators for the college that we didn't really know what all went on with the program, and then some even announcements of changes to the program. So for the overview, nursing students, when they come to Mankato, they're known as pre-nursing students. They all get a nice purple little handbook, and it has their 4 years all planned out for them, semester by semester. And so they normally apply to the program then the fall of their sophomore year. There's 3 things that they take in count of when they apply to the program, and that's their GPA, their HESI, and then a group interview session. The GPA is worth 50% of the consideration, and then the HESI and group interview are 25%. So the average GPA of students who are accepted into our nursing program is a 3.6 to a 3.7, but the minimum requirement is a 3.0. For the HESI, the average acceptance, or the average score for admitted students is 87%. And then for the group interview, what it consists of is normally 4 to 5 students and 2 faculty members. They are all given 10 sample questions to prepare for before they go to the interview, and they are judged on about 3 different things. The 2 faculty members are given a rubric to go over to grade the students on fairly. They look at their ability to communicate independently, their ability to critical think, and then also their professional demeanor in that. And so the average score for admitted students is a 21 out of a 23, and it lasts around approximately 30 minutes. So on average, we normally get 70 to 80 students that apply to our nursing program a semester. This semester, spring semester of 2019, we had 61 people apply, so it was a little on the lower side, which is normally how it kind of is for the spring semester, because most people apply in the fall like they're scheduled to. And then starting fall of 2019, we are accepting 48 students instead of the usual 40, so that is a huge celebration for our college. And then also, one of the major changes that we are having, and this came from recommendations from the students in the program, is that starting fall of 2019, when you apply to the program, you must have your CNA. That is a requirement, and that came from recommendations from the students that are in the program. And then we also have talked about expansion, so we are expanding this semester from 40 to 48 students. And there are just a few things that we always need to consider when expanding. One is clinical sites. So the reason why it's 40 to 48 is because every clinical site only accepts 8 students at a time, and that's the clinical site's rules. And so in order to add more students to the program, we need more clinical sites. Another thing is then we need more faculty members. We only have so many faculty members that can teach the students at one time, and then also more space. So we are looking to expand the program more, but those are just 3 things that we always need to consider before we expand.
Okay, and so then what we discussed with our Dean Rutherford, is the amount of students who come in. I'm sure freshman year, your first year, you knew a lot of students who said they were nursing or self-identified as a nursing student. But now if you think to yourself, there's probably not as many upperclassmen, and part of that is a retention issue, an advising issue that's happening that we talked about with our dean. So that is currently the advising and the College of Iowa Health and Nursing for the nursing program. When students, let's say they don't get in on their first or second try, they keep applying and then they'll go to their advisor, and oftentimes what happens is they're advised to just switch to a different school. You're not going to make it into the program here, so just switch to a different school. But that leaves us at a loss and a deficit. So now we've had these students for 2 years, and then they go to a different school, get their nursing degree, they still pursue that, but they're not here. Rather than showing off all the other programs that we have in the College of Iowa Health and Nursing that they could utilize. So one of the main things that we're looking at is expanding those opportunities and letting them know that you're not too far invested, because the viewpoint that a lot of students get is that they've taken 2 years of nursing classes, they don't have anything that they can use it for, so now they're just going to transfer rather than staying in here. And Dean Rutherford actually talked to us a little bit about how you can use these credits for speech-language pathology, as well as in the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, there's a health communications degree that a lot of those credits will transfer over to. So if you don't want to stay in the allied health and nursing field, you can use those ones as well. So really just focusing on retaining those students rather than advising them to go elsewhere.
Yeah, any questions?
President Cronin?
Yield to 2 questions. One, I know you two might not know just because you're not nursing majors, but do you know what exactly it is to be a CNA, or what it takes more specifically? Is that a job that international students can obtain?
Yeah, so I have a sheet. Because it's a brand new thing. It was originally a pilot program, but that is one thing they absolutely considered before doing this. It's called the Employment Experience Program that they do, where they help they don't match you up, but the international students can go to different nursing homes, just any site that uses a CNA, and they can do like a partnership through the school. I can't remember how many we've currently done it with, but we're getting to the point. I can show you this packet too, or anyone else who wants to see it, I can make copies. But we are at the point of where we've had so many of those where now we can recommend students to go to certain places, and they're willing to work with us. But yeah, that is something they considered before making this a requirement as international students.
And my second question, just because you talked a lot about, the advising of nursing, have either of you talked with the nursing advisor or the graduate assistants and just discussed these with them?
Yeah, so I met with the nursing advisor, Cassie. She actually came to about 2 of our meetings when we were supposed to originally give our senator's report, but she unfortunately could not make it to this one. So she was here at one point to be able to answer questions if we couldn't answer any of them, but yeah.
Okay.
Senator Biggs?
You said they expanded it to 48 students. So is that because of the remodel of the clinical science building? Like, how are they allowed to expand that? Do you know what I'm kind of asking? Okay, sorry, I was just...
Yeah, so the biggest thing holding us back was the clinical sites.
Okay.
So the new building did give us more room, but the biggest thing holding us back was those clinical sites.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I have a question. So for them being CNA required to leave the nursing program, is there a cost for them to take these courses?
I'll show you the packet.
Is there a price though?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head. I got my CNA in Wisconsin, so I don't know how it is here. A lot of places will pay for you to get it, but I don't know that.
It is cost requirement? Okay, so for these international students who are being required to take the CNA program, but they can't utilize or do anything outside of it because they have to work within, how did you guys discuss how that would be fair or justify that?
I discussed it with Cassie about almost a month and a half ago, and they have things built into place for it. Again, she's not here. I can give you her email, but I can just show you this packet too. It explains everything. We talked about it about a month and a half ago when we were supposed to give our Senate report originally.
Any more questions? Senator O'Connor. Senator Owusu, I'm sorry.
You might have answered this question, but what happens if a student doesn't get accepted into the nursing program?
Yeah, I can answer that for you. So students can reapply to the nursing program. So oftentimes their advisor, if they do decide they want to reapply, so typically it's in their sophomore year. If they don't get in, they can always reapply. They can retake your class, but they can't retake it if they had a B in it, so they have to have less than a B in order to retake that class. And they can only retake it.
They're changing it.
Yeah, so right now the ruling is you can retake it 2 times, which is the university policy, but there is talk about changing it that you can only retake it 1 time. That was a month ago that Dean Rutherford told us that, so it might have changed in the last month since we have met with her on that issue. But so it's 2, but it might be changing to 1, and I'm not sure when that's going into effect. She didn't have an exact date for us. Like I said, that was a month ago though. Otherwise, they can be advised to just transfer to a different university for the nursing program there.
We do have a graduate a completion program too. So if you can't finish your nursing program here, you can always come back and finish it. So that's an online program?
It is,
Yeah.
and it's the baccalaureate completion program for nursing. So if you have a 2-year degree, you can come back and get your baccalaureate here.
Yeah.
Is that all? All right, thank you. All right, next we have Senator Hoysa.
Hi everyone, I'm Sofi. Senators, you will probably know me for those in the gallery. I'm a residential life senator here. I'm also a community advisor in Julia Sears, and I'm a political science student. And I'm excited to talk about my report today. I think one of the coolest parts about being a senator is that we got to get to look into the inside of what trying to run a university looks like. And you know, I'm 20. I don't know a lot about what it's like to run a university, but what we kind of do as our job is point out things that maybe we're not super thrilled about being happening at the university. And I found that really hard at first because I love coming to school. I was like kind of having a struggle with something that I was looking for that I was like, I don't really love the way that that's being run. But one thing I did notice last semester as being a community advisor was the long waiting list that was happening at the counseling center that was happening maybe October, November. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. The waiting list got up to, there's rumors about how long it was, but some people said up to 100 students long, which means students were waiting 3 to 6 weeks to be able to actually get in to see a mental health counselor, which is what I deemed is not an acceptable time. So I tried to kind of look into that and see, what's going on there, what our counseling center services provide. I met with Carrie Much, who's the dean, the department chair of the counseling center, to talk to her about what's going on there. And I also researched about what best practices are happening at the counseling center. And then finally, I met with Dr. Jones, Vice President of Student Affairs and Enrollment, and we had a conversation too about what is happening at the counseling center. So what I learned through my research and talking to different people is that the counseling centers across the nation are facing a higher demand of mental health needs. Both because people are being diagnosed earlier when they are coming into college, right? Like people know that they're having a mental health problem before they get to college, so they already know that they need those services. And because it's just a rising issue that's happening in our society right now. So it's not just at Mankato that the demands are getting higher, it's happening around the country. And so I thought it was important to address the wait list and the need for mental health counselors, so I wanted to look into what types of routes we could take to make that better. So the first thing I thought, simply, let's just hire another counselor. But obviously, it's a bit more complicated than that. But hopefully we can be looking forward to getting another counselor soon. A counselor just retired. And since if you stay at the university for longer, you get paid more money. So we'll be hiring a new counselor coming in, so they will get a lower pay grade. Hopefully we can use the change between the counselor that was there and the counselor coming in, to use that money to pay for a new counselor. Hopefully we can look forward to that. If that isn't able because of the budget, Dr. Jones and I also talked about maybe changing the model of the counseling center. A lot of universities are changing this by making it more of a referral center than a center where you actually go in to stay for the entire time. Most mental health concerns that are addressed by counseling centers are solved within 3 to 6 sessions, and we have a 10-session limit. So if we could shorten the amount of sessions that are necessary, and people who need long-term treatment, people who have long-term depression, it's not just an episode that's happening because of something around you, we would get you set up with an actual mental health counselor who can serve you for long-term for more than the 10 sessions that we would be able to provide at our counseling center. So those are some ideas that we threw around. Hopefully, like I said, we can see that counselor position coming in with a short change from that. Also, there's a new RSO on campus that's helping raise awareness about mental health. It's like called Mental Health Mankato. It's run by Kyle Edwards, if you know him. It's a really cool organization, so if you're passionate about it, you can talk to them. But there are several things happening in order to address the mental health concerns on campus. I would encourage you, if you're passionate about it, to learn more about it and talk to me so we can see what we can do to help the issue that's happening on our campus. So yeah, any questions?
Senator Moyne. Yeah, I just had a question. So I know you said an idea about becoming more of a referral session and how a lot of those are cleared up in 3 to 6. I just wanted to clarify, is that they would still be offering the lesser amount to the students, so they still are able to get on-site counseling then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what the model typically looks like is you would like, you know, if you go to the counseling center right now, what happens is you fill out this iPad online form, and they address your concern from like how immediate it is. So obviously, if you have suicidal ideations of either harming yourself or others, they're going to take you in. You're not going to have to wait the 3 to 6 weeks. So we're kind of doing that already, but what it would look like is you would come in and immediately meet with someone. You would talk for about 45 minutes, 30 minutes, and then they would decide what they think is best moving forward. Maybe the 10 sessions would work perfect for you. Maybe we need to help find you somebody else off campus who can better suit the specific need that you're going through, especially if you're having issues that are specific to being a certain identity, things like that. So it could kind of help suit the needs of lots of different students who are coming and using the counseling center, but still serving the needs of students who are in panic mode and need someone to talk to for those 3 to 6 sessions to work things out.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yeah. I thought you meant you were getting rid of the counseling on-site, and I misunderstood that part. Senator Moyne?
Yes, so just to clarify, so like for example, as you said that we have to fill the form, so do you have to fill the form again also, or we don't have to, we just go in and
well, it hasn't changed yet. These are all possibilities that the counseling center are discussing and student affairs are discussing. It just would depend on what type of paperwork you need to fill out before you get counseling services.
So it means that we have to fill up the form, right?
Right now, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? All right, thank you. We'll move on to Senator Zelmer's.
Okay, hello Senators. I'm also a residential life senator, but my issue, although not quite as serious, when I came into the Senate, one thing I was really surprised about is the lack of communication that we have between ourselves and our constituency. Although we do have these meetings and we have it live streamed so everyone can see it, there's not many ways that we truthfully reach out to our constituency other than like if we send an email, or else we have office hours, which I don't know about you, but not a lot of people come to my office hours. But one thing that I've been trying to do personally is make sure that I'm really reaching out to residential life students and seeing what they think their issues are, rather than just me saying these are the issues I see, let me fix them, because I obviously don't see the issues that everyone has. One thing that I've been doing to address that is I go to RHA every week, which is the Residential Housing Association, and there's a representative from every floor on campus that lives in the res halls. Although not every floor shows up every week, I give a presentation every single week at the Residential Housing Association just to kind of update on what we're doing as a Senate, what's going on in our meetings. With budget season, next week I'm doing a presentation, just a short little overview of what we decided for it, just to make sure that we can get our budget approved, as well as see if there's any issues with it that we didn't address, although that is sort of a forethought. I did talk to them about it sooner and offered to address any questions they had, any concerns they had, and see what their ideas were. I've also started, although I didn't do this earlier in the semester, I've also started ending my presentations with, are there any issues that you guys see that you want me to address? Although RHA normally addresses the issues that are brought up by students, it's like, it could be like, oh, the laundry's not working on this floor, what can we do about the laundry? And then they come in and they tell the entire body about what they can do. But beyond RHA, I'm hoping, I've been getting in contact with Cindy Janey, and we've been trying to set up a town hall sort of thing. So then it's not just RHA representatives that are going to be there bringing issues from their floor. It's kind of like a game of telephone, because someone can be like, oh, my resident had an issue, and then they're going to be like, well, what are the specifics? And you're like, I don't know. So I'm hoping to set that up with Cindy Janey. I'm hoping to have her at the meeting, as well as collaborating with the other residential life senators and making sure that this is open for all residents that can come in with any issues that they see that we can fix. I also hope to work more closely with the RHA exec board to see if there is anything that they're having issues getting done and seeing what we can do in this body as a whole for it. And I also hope that this inspires other senators to set up town halls for their constituency as well. So with that, are there any questions?
Any questions for Senator Zellmer? Thank you. And then our last senator report will be Senator Chiadsky.
Hello everyone, as you know, my name is Mr. Jantriti. I am off-campus senator. I'm also the public relation and marketing coordinator. I'm gonna go with my off-campus overview real quick. Last week, not the last week, the before last week, I went to talk to Live Active Apartment regarding the snow removal, because after the snow, their road was really bad and they didn't even clean it. I talked to Summit and Jacob Heights to clean their road right away, because our bus, they go through from Live Active, also Summit, so that they can clean it right away. Besides that, I also talked with them about the printer that I was working with Senator Annabelle. So maybe next semester they will try to bring off-campus printing services such as Summit has right now. They have a small computer lab, so anyone who lives in Summit, they can print out anything, even though it's at 3 o'clock in the morning, if they have the access. Apart from that, as a public relation and marketing coordinator, during spring break, we were able to change our logo. If you see first floor by that next to Wells Fargo, the couch area, we have changed our logo. It's now student government. And in the office, it also has changed. I haven't checked today. I talked to Mike Eccles. He's working on the watermark for the glass. So it will be changed pretty soon. And beside that, I have ordered the banner so we can do the tabling. Because of that, we couldn't do any tabling because it's a name change. Last year it was MSSA, and this year it's student government. So we couldn't use a single thing from last year. That's the reason that we couldn't do any tabling. And I'm extremely sorry for that, because me and Amber, we are working on the budget, then how much we have estimated for our public relation. We couldn't come up until the budget meeting end. So now we have our amount, so we definitely will do some promotion and some tabling for our student government. And I will yield for the question. Any questions from anyone?
Yeah, I have two questions.
Yep.
So the first one is, I know Senator Garten gave a report about snow removal off campus as well previously in the year, and she mentioned how Highland has a program where they let their students who live there, or their residents who live there, shovel as like a miniature job per se. Did you ask any of these apartments or complexes about that opportunity as well?
For Highland, I will yield to Senator Garten.
So we're still working on talking to a lot of the apartment complexes, and at this moment we can't really tell them to do anything. The only thing we can do is give them a recommendation list, and so we're still in the process of making that, and we'll be hopefully get it to them by the end of this semester.
Okay, and then my second question is, you mentioned that we weren't able to do any tabling because we didn't have any things to give out. I'm just wondering why we haven't done any tabling to reach out to our constituents that doesn't require anything to give out. So more like suggestion boxes or meeting senators, so being present so that people can associate a face and a name with their college or res halls or whatever identity they follow under, that doesn't require any tabling materials.
I understand your concern, but when you do something, we have to represent student government. But because of the name change, we didn't have anything that represents student government. Like we cannot see it just like, oh, they're gonna ask like where are you from, student government. We don't have a single banner or anything that represents. That's the reason we weren't able to do any tabling. So I hope before our session ends, we will definitely have our Tuesday town hall. So students, they can come and they can share their thought, so we can work on it for our student government session.
Any more questions? Thank you. concludes our senator report. We'll go on to our presenter, Raymond Whitty.
Do I present over there or right here in the middle?
Come on, man.
Building assistants set stuff up for you and they want you. So, just like, we'd like having you right here in front so I can see all of you. I'm Raymond Whitty. I'm the Students United Campus Organizing Coordinator. He used to be intern, he's coordinator now. I'm the new one, I just got hired this year. And I'm here to talk about delegates, because there's a lot of information going around, and I'm here to tell you what's actually happening. It is taking place on April 5th through the 7th, so that's the first weekend in April. It is taking place, not in St. Paul, but at Madden's on Gull Lake in Brainerd. It's a resort in Brainerd. That's all I know. I'm here to invite senators to go. I've reached out to some other students. Obviously, my team is going, but I'm also here to reach out to senators and see who wants to go. We have room for 12 senators to go. So if you'd like to go, you can always reach out to me. My email address is raymond.whitty@mssu.edu, or if you can find the Students United one as well, I'll reach out to both. Total, Mankato we're tied for the most amount of representatives that we send to delegates. We are tied with St. Cloud. We all get 19 total representatives at delegates. This is a big deal. Our delegates this semester, we're focusing on like different changes that we want for next year, like our budget. I know you guys just had your big budget meeting last week. I'm sorry that went for 6 hours. I know how it is. I was a senator last year. And so we're going to do something similar to that. We're also going to be voting on chair, vice chair, and treasurer for Students United. So yeah, right now it's Kayla Shelley, and she'll be in charge, or they will be in charge of setting up their new chair and getting people involved. I don't know if anyone's applied for the position yet. They didn't tell me much about that in my meeting today, but that is pretty much my update. We need to register if we want to go to delegates by Monday, and then something new for this delegates is that we're picking our own room and roommates. In the past, it was like you sign up, you say your gender identity, and then they kind of put you in rooms. This year, it's like you pick where you want to go. So, but like, it's the assumption you're rooming with other Mankato people as well, not from the other 6 seat universities. So I'll yield to questions.
Any questions? Senator Erickson?
I just want like a clarification. I thought as delegates we only vote for vice chair and treasurer.
Yes, the board members will vote for chair. So Mimi will be for President Cronin will be voting for the chair. But we're there and it's assumed that obviously our board member will talk to us and like get our opinions for students. So like it's a group effort. Yeah.
Point of clarification, yeah, so that's what typically is done in the past. It's during a board meeting, so I'll be sitting at the table, but there is, like caucuses that I'll come and talk to the delegates and see what everyone's opinions are, because I do know there are multiple candidates, so it's important that, I'm representing Mankato, and I would love to talk to the Mankato students.
Yeah. Senator Zellmer? Chance?
Yeah, can you send us the email for register? Because I think we didn't get
yes.
the email.
Once I know who's going, I'll just send out a mass email and get y'all registered to go. And then also, like, if you know if other people want to room together, I don't know how they're going to do that. I assume you all need to say, like, I want to room with this person wants to also room with you. Hopefully that's how it works. It's a new system, so we'll see how it goes. Just another point of, this year, since I'm in charge of who gets to go, essentially, I've also asked members of Residential Hall Association to go, and other members that from different student government committees as well. I've invited them, because it's not just senators, it's also like student representation. So that's why I'm wanting to make it a very diverse group of students. Any other questions? Cool, so if I can get everyone to email me by Friday if you want to go, that'd be great.
Alright, so now we're going to move on to new business. We will begin with the CSU fee. We'll be voting on the requested amount. Is there any dissent? Okay, so if we vote If we vote on this, we're just approving their budget for next year.
Can you remind the Senate what that is, what the request is for the?
Isn't it a 1.27? Can we yield to Mark or Emily?
I didn't hear anything.
The requested amount for CSU.
Yeah, what's the number?
We're just trying to remember what the number is.
Sorry. Yep.
It's a 1.2% Correct. So as a point of information, it is going to be the proposed fiscal year 2020 student union fee is $10.86 per credit. So it's banded at $260.64 per student.
Senator Poskett, do you have a question? Oh, okay. All right. Do you have a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to amend
All right.
their proposal.
To what?
To amend their.
To what price? To what?
To 5%, negative 5%.
Negative 5%.
So do you have the numbers? So what I'm understanding is you would like to decrease the proposed amount by 5%.
Yes.
Do you know what that number is at all? Did you?
So I averaged out their expenditures. Okay. So then I'm saying we match that, and that equals to a negative 5% decrease, because we never had this information prior, but it seems to me that they have accumulated a reserve that is inappropriate to relative to the other reserves. Therefore, they would be able to make up that 5%, so that would be $160,000, which is only 5% from the reserve. That's my proposal.
Well, so they're asking for $10.86 per credit. What are you motioning to change it to? I need an exact number.
Point of clarification. I just did the math. 5% decrease would be to $10.32 a credit, banded at $247.61 for the semester.
Yes.
So is that your motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All right, so I'm going to open up discussion. Do you want to add as to why you're backing why you're second?
Yeah, so Senator Pospisil, the way I understand it, is looked at the past 5 years of CSU expenditures that is provided on our yellow sheet here, our yellow packet. If y'all want to look at it, the last page. And the expense, average expense over 5 years comes out to $4,035,889, whereas the requested, whereas the total anticipated expenses based on this budget for 2020 is $4,195,664. So about 5% is I believe the 5% is coming from the decrease. It's about 5% more than what the average has been. I support this motion for a couple of reasons. One, if you look at the history of the revenues, you can see over the past 5 years, about $1.5 million have gone from student fee allocations to the CSU and into the CSU operating reserve. I don't think that the question is an issue of whether or not operating reserves are important. I think the question is an issue of whether operating reserves are adequate versus excessive. Given that there's a 5 to 7 month recommendation and that the total 3.1 million, pushing 3.2, represents significantly more than 5 to 7 months, then I support the proposal.
All right, now we'll open up the floor for discussion.
Alrighty, am I allowed to a few comments? Is that okay? It's like I'm kind of responding to the motion, right? I just wanted to double check. So right off the bat, the CSU board, we actually did a lot of discussion, and I wanted to point that Mark and Teresa were very transparent and provided everything that they were asked to provide. The board, when we discussed what we wanted it to be, like finalized before we presented to you, that was 6-1 vote. So 6 of us out of the 7 voted to do this budget. So we did our research, we did the math. I do want to point out also that Mark was not in that final meeting, so he did not have a voice in that. We purely decided based off of, the students' thoughts and questions that we had asked previously. So I did want to make that a point that not only have Mark and Teresa been very transparent, but that the vote from the CSU board was made purely by students representing the CSU board. So, thank you.
Senator Pospisil?
Am I able to respond to that?
Yes.
Okay, that being said, I can't ask for questions. Okay. When I did my research, I initially thought, okay, this is interesting. Just because this is a 3-figure number times 3. And if you look at staff, it's about 400,000. Athletics is about 200,000. Health is 900,000. Tech doesn't even have a reserve. But then you look at the CSU, and that's $3.1 million. And if you look at the balances, it's a pretty big amount of money that there's an excessive rollover, and they would be able to have more. They would be able to create revenue. They would still be positive, but I feel like this would be correcting a problem that's been going on for a while now. So that's my opinion. So relatively, I can see if you're just the CSU, but relative to everybody else, it's a different story.
Senator Erickson?
I would just like to comment on the fact, because I sit on the CSU board committee, so I just wanted to say some stuff that we talked about. Well, I was there the whole time. What I was quickly informed on, and we've had a lot of meetings just going over the budget. But for those of you who don't know, the CSU, their sources of revenue is the student fee and what they make. Like in the bullpen, for rental income, self-drive, it's what they make. That's the only thing that funds them. The university does not fund the CSU at all. It's just student fees and this. And also, you guys keep talking about the reserve, but right now, what the total estimated anticipated expenses for next year is, for fiscal year 2020, is $4,195,664, and the total estimated funds available that they'll be getting with the student fee assessment is $4,195,664. They're asking for exactly what they're estimating to spend.
Senator Landis?
I don't think there's any question on whether or not the request is balanced with the anticipated expenses. The question is, over the years, we have a series of proposals of recommended revenue versus actual expenditure. And when you compare it to actual expenditures, the number that Senator Pospisil recommended is bringing the anticipated expense to the 5-year average of actual expenditures. And so I think that the spirit of this is that we've been overestimating for the last several years to the tune of $1.5 million over the last 5 years. And we'd like to bring that more into line with what is necessary rather than continuing to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into a reserve fund.
Senator Zellmer?
Although I see the points of the amount that they've made and the amount that they've used, and that we could decrease it, I don't know if 5% seems like more dramatic. And I guess my one issue is yes, you looked at the numbers, and I trust your math because I know I wasn't doing the math, so I definitely trust it more than if I did it. But I guess my issue is, did you account for the expected decrease in enrollment? Because if there's an expected decrease in enrollment, the CSU still has to run every day, and it still costs the same amount to put the lights on. And they won't be making as much revenue because not as many people will be there. So although I would agree that we need to lower it, we need to decrease more than what they asked. I'm not sure that I'm concerned that we will leave them without enough, because making revenue is great, and I understand that we could argue that they've been making too much and their reserve is growing too large, but we don't want to leave them where they have to end up using their reserves to an amount that would be too much, I guess. So I would agree to lower it, but I would not want to lower it to 5% for those reasons.
President Cronin?
Just to your point about, yes, it's important to take into account decreasing enrollment, but enrollment's been decreasing for the last several years, and they're still having that extra money going to the reserve. And we just created a student activity fees budget that took, what was it, $25,000 from their reserve, and that budget doesn't have nearly the same amount that the CSU budget has. Whereas the CSU budget has 100% of their operating fees for a year. That budget only has about a sixth or a quarter, and just something to consider when we're looking at why is it okay for us to take from the student activities fee budget and not Blink and I, but when we want to take from a budget that's so healthy, it becomes an issue all of a sudden.
Senator Andrade Laura?
I just lost the last one I had, but kind of going off of what Emma said, yes, the CSU does run every day. Yes, a lot of people use this building for many different services. It provides a lot for the students. I don't think that cutting the budget is wise, considering we are asking for a 1.2% decrease already, not taking into account the fact that the students in Edina and South Central are no longer paying the student fee for the CSU. With that being said, you do need a healthy reserve in order to fund an expansion of a building. So if that were to come in the future, we would need to find that money somewhere in our budget, and the reserve, I think, is where that would come from.
Senator Christensen?
That was spot on. Great job with that. I did want to point out also that the minimum wage has gone up, so that's also another contributing factor within that. And then just a reminder, the CSU board, when we did have this discussion, which we did multiple times, I, as the chairwoman, asked and made sure that everyone understood exactly what they were agreeing upon and exactly how the process went. So I'm, kind of curious why now all of a sudden everything's changing when, we passed it as a CSU board. That's our job to do that. That's what we represent, and that's what we agree upon. So I wanted to say those two things as well.
Senator Landis?
Just a point with Senator Andrade Lara's expansion, just so that we're all on the same page. The CSU currently has a bond for about $643,000 in their budget line, which is going to expire in 2022. So in about 3 years, there's about $643,000 per year that the CSU has already regularly been charging students. My anticipation is that that money will not suddenly return to students, and that money will then be used towards another bonding project to fund said expansion, so that the $3 million in the reserves is not going to be the next building fund. Some of the money may be used from the reserve to help start that up, but there will be about $643,000 freed up in the next few years, or next foreseeable future, in a few years.
Senator Bigg?
No one is doubting the fact that you guys didn't go through this budget. No one is doubting the fact that you guys don't know your numbers or you're not questioning the right things. It's our job as a Senate to go through and know that we all know what's going on. It's not doubting your ability to check the numbers. Zach reviewed our budget, they passed the budget, and we nitpicked every single line of that. And that's all I have to say about that.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
I would just like to, I missed part of the discussion. I'd like to make sure I'm understanding. Are you talking about a 5%, did you move a 5% reduction of this year's fee or a 5% lowering of the request?
So a total negative 5%.
Total negative 5%. Okay, so that would
Not
be,
an additional 5%.
okay, so $10.45 is the number I come up with.
Yes, that, I had
Round.
done it 5% off of the request, so that number I originally had given was wrong. It's $10.45, not $10.32.
All right, we're gonna, Senator Christensen.
So I'm sorry if anyone took that as us being aggressive with the budget and the numbers. I just wanted the Senate to feel more confident in our decision as a group. So I did want to address that right away. And also to remind you, we're asking for a decrease. So if we're doing it to a 5% decrease, students in the future are now going to have to pay a higher amount for that. We're looking for the future students. We're not talking about now or next year. There's a reason why we chose to decrease it this much, so that future students aren't going to be having to pay a ton more than what we are right now. So that was the final decision of the board.
Senator Hinton, did you have a question?
I didn't know how the question.
Okay, I'll let Senator Possum speak.
Okay, and I just wanted to say this because it hasn't gone up. You're right. You know, they have been decreasing, but they've been doing it little by little by little, and that money has continued to compile. And I feel like this is something that we've been moving forward to, and something that would benefit us and be able to correct what we weren't informed in previously. So with that, thank you guys all for considering this.
All right, we're gonna go. Sorry. Senator Landis. Oh, John. Sorry.
Can I just bring up a couple of things to think about? So, whereas last week during the student activity fee budget, what you did is you helped fund things out of reserves. And you basically didn't say to the departments, reduce your expenses. You basically said, we're still gonna expect that your program to be funded at this level, but we're gonna use some reserve money to do that. So, just to make sure, what we would anticipate with the CSU doing is not adjusting necessarily their budget. So what could potentially happen is if some funds are pulled out of reserve to fund the expenses that they're anticipating, when that reserve balance gets to a more balanced point, I guess, in your eyes, there will have to be a significant increase.
They would still be.
So that's I'm just trying to bring that up. So, okay. So am I understanding? Are you understanding what I'm saying? So basically, if their expenses stay the same, but you use some of the piggy bank to pay those expenses, at some point that piggy bank you're not going to be able to get to a point where you're still pulling from it. So when that happens, and we still need to have the right amount of money to fund those expenses, that fee is going to jump more significantly. So just making sure that's what we're having the understanding of.
Senator Possum.
Okay, to answer that, point of clarification, I guess.
I clicked on Senator Possum. She'll continue.
Okay. So what I did, because I thought that too, it's not like just paying out of a credit card to maintain, it's not half. I took an average expense, so we're matching their expenses because they've had so much of a carry forward. Does that make sense? So they would still be having a carry forward, just not to the extent that they do already. So when they asked, it was a difference of $160,000. Okay? So that, if they really do need that $160,000, they can take it out of their almost $2 million that they have generated over the past year, instead of, say, we have two options. Correct? And move forward towards a more balanced budget, or continue to see that grow and overspend and have a reserve that has far more carry forward than it needs to have. Does that make sense? So we aren't cutting anything. We're just bringing it towards where their expenses. Does that make sense? I'm not cutting their budget. I'm just matching what their expenses are currently.
Yeah. Senator Landis.
Just so that everyone knows, at the proposed $10.45 budget, with the anticipated revenue that would give the CSU an anticipated revenue of $4,070,037.25, which does exceed their total expenses for 4 out of the last 5 years. So just to go off of Senator Coster's point once again, this proposal isn't necessarily to eat into the existing $3.1 million. It's simply to get rid of the additional hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going in every year.
Senator Olson?
I'm just wondering, because you were talking about the huge jump eventually, how long do you estimate like it would take? I know it's hard to figure out, but like you can at least guess.
Debbie, I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, and because I don't know what capital projects are on the docket potentially down the line for potential big expenditure. They have to plan down the road, long time down the road.
Senator Erickson?
Thank you. So Senator Costello keeps bringing up the point of the carry forward. I had the exact same question when the budget was brought to me. The operating reserve was put in front of our faces, and I was like, why are we still putting more and more into our budget? And what was exactly explained to me, because that was also my question, is that as you can see, it is going down little by little by little. We are trying our hardest, Mark and Teresa are trying their hardest when they present this budget to us to make it exactly to where we're not having to put this much money into our reserve. Every year they're getting better and better and better. And as you can see, we're on track for not having any carry forward anymore. And we are looking towards future students when we make this decision. That was the #1 thing that we looked at when looking at this budget, is what can we do for the future students. Retention is a huge issue that's brought to our attentions 24/7 now. Next year, if we don't have as many students here, this year we have a decrease. Next year, we may not have a decrease. If we want to go into reserves, the reason that there's money in that reserve is because they have plans for that money. It's not just there for nothing. It's going to be used eventually. If anyone has more questions about that, they can contact Mark. He'd love to explain it to them. He's very open about everything and very transparent about the CSU budget and everything to do with it. But we are looking to better our future students, and this year we have a 1.2% decrease. We've been decreasing. Next year we may not be able to do that.
Senator Dahl?
My personal opinion for this is, I do think that, they do have quite a bit in their reserves, but this is something that they're going to be using for, future expansions, future things that'll, get students to want to come here, make it more student friendly, add diversity, all these types of things. In reality, my personal opinion is I do think that a 5% decrease is just a little bit too much. Yet I wouldn't be opposed to maybe like a 2% decrease, or maybe even a 2.5 if we all can agree on this. But if you want to improve, you have to be willing to sacrifice. And I do think that if we start cutting off a lot right away and making them get out of the reserves, we might not get a new arena, we might not get a movie theater, we might not get a video game arena, or whatever we all vote on. I just think that, obviously, yes, they're putting money into their reserves, but that's for good intentions. If athletics had $50 million in their reserves and we started cutting that, we're probably not getting a new stadium. You got to look at it in both perspectives. Yes, it's a lot of money. A lot of money is going to the reserves, but they are, their future goals, and if Mark can say it, or these two, or whoever else in the CSU, are probably great things that are going to help out our students. They're not just using this money just to keep racking up and just in case. They're actually going to spend it hopefully in the next few years.
Senator Olson?
I'm just wondering if we can motion to table this conversation, or if it's possible to figure out more information with regards to those budgets, because I know you talked about it.
I would yield time to Mr. Constantine if there are specific questions that he might be able to clarify.
Senator Redenis?
I just have a quick question. So you said that there was you guys have the reserves and you guys have plans to use towards. Do you guys know any ideas of what plans you're planning to use reserves for? And I yield to more.
There's two separate reserves, one for R&R and for deferred maintenance. This summer we're probably spending up to $750,000 out of the deferred maintenance and R&R reserves for some projects that we have going on. The operating reserve is, we don't go to that typically. It wouldn't be something we go to unless there was not enough money in R&R to be able to do that. To some people's points, we don't build a budget to stockpile money. Just make sure that people know that on the up front. The last 5 years, the CSU has raised their 5 years. We've raised our total ask for not more than 2% for 5 years. So I hope that gives the new senators around the room that haven't heard us before. It's like not that Teresa or myself or the student meeting board are trying to inflate numbers in order to be able to stockpile money. If that was the case, we would be asking for 0 to those 5 years and small amounts other years overall. The facts are the facts. As some of the senators have talked about, the money is a little larger than we would hope it to be. I think that Emily has talked about something that's really, really important. I would say the budget when I've been here 5.5 years was a little more liberal than I would personally like to have. It's not a slam on anybody before me. I'm a fiscal conservative. I inherited the budget when I came here, so it was in the middle of the year. The next year was my first budget that I'm building with the student union board and with Teresa, so I'm following the lead of some other people along the way sometime on those type of things. So now I'll take a look at the last 3 years, I guess is what I'd like to reflect on. And as a couple of people have said, that operating reserve money has dropped, and this past year it was $130-some-thousand. And that's still a decent amount of money in a given year, but you all need to understand why money's left over in a budget. It's because we have to build a certain amount of money in for utilities. You have to go on the high side a little bit. If you have a good winter, you're going to have some money left over, right? That's the way you have to if you're a good budget person, as we have a lot around this room and people on the university. You may have some reserves. If I have a person that's gone for an opening in a department, for instance, I did double duty one semester and had an associate director. We saved ourselves probably upwards close between that salary and the benefits, maybe up to $80,000 in a given year. So it doesn't take much for some of those things to bring money back into the budget. If we have a person that, for instance, was in a budget that had a family benefits package versus a single benefits package, the amount of money in those things are much different along the way too. So just to give you an idea of how money does come back in the budget, and we worked really very, very hard to make sure those numbers, we've crunched the budget down as far as, I mean not as far as, we've made, the budget numbers are the numbers that we need to operate, basically. I won't say this year we won't have money left over. Hopefully we will have some money left over, because if you're building a good budget, you may potentially have a little bit left, and you can't control what happens throughout the year on some different things. So hopefully it's helped some perspective for folks on how you build a budget and how things work. So I don't know if I answered totally the question, but I'm more than happy to answer any other questions you might have.
You did, thank you.
Senator Nowinski?
Yeah, so when I was initially presented these numbers, I discussed this earlier this afternoon with other senators. I was concerned with how much money was over the past, from fiscal year 2014 to 2018, how much money was getting put away. That was concerning to me, because I was like, well, what am I paying for? But as you can see, the budget has been, the reserves have been trending down. Besides the 1 year it went up, but in the past 3 years, it's trended down, and I feel like, they're asking for a decrease that's going to get closer to a more reasonable amount that may be put into reserves at the end of the year. So, in my opinion, I feel like, I was kind of on both sides of this. I see both sides of the argument, but I'm not sure that 5% is the correct number here. I almost yield to the people who spent all those hours creating that 1.2%, negative 1.2% number. And I think that, that negative, they're still asking for a decrease that will get us closer to a more reasonable amount getting put into reserves. So for those reasons, I don't think I support a negative 5% at this time.
Senator Dahl.
Can I yield to Mark and ask you a question in terms of, you said you spend, your reserves for utilities or any expenses and stuff. Do you have any future plans for the CSU in terms of, new sightseeing things that can bring in students and whatnot that you want to save this money for?
I think Senator Landis spoke to this a little bit. I won't sit here in front of you right now and say, this is what we have planned. But it's not a matter of fact of when it's going to happen. Or if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. We're going to have an addition in this building down the road somewhere along the line. And, at least I dream that we will for the students by what people want and ask for in the building on a regular basis. So if you have money in reserves, to answer your question, if we have money in the reserves, it's more money that goes towards the study, the architectural part, the planning piece, because you're going to spend a decent amount of money just to go ahead and start the plan for that along the way. And then if we have, let's say, $3 million, you hope to put maybe $2 million, a certain amount of money towards the project too, because when we come down to actually funding that project, how much are we going to go to? Senator Landis spoke correctly on the bond that we have right now. I can't say what we're going to do with that or not. That money could go towards something or other, but you know what costs are down the road? That money will make it get to what we want to do in the future. My thing is, I hope that you all look not with blinders on, but look with a broad stroke, not about you and your time here only, but what this means for future students. Because I think if we have more money in the reserve, and again, I haven't tried to stockpile it, it's there, okay? The reality is there. But with that money, I think we have better opportunity in the future to save students or charge them less and their parents less down the road for when something like an addition potentially happens. And again, we're in the process of starting talking about it. I don't have anything on paper for you yet. I don't want to make it sound like the case, but I see really over the next 2 years for us doing some pretty major talks with the union board, with the administration, Dr. Jones, Vice President Straka, and the revenue fund folks about this. And we'll say one more thing, because you were talking about earlier about this, really important. The student union is a revenue fund building. We don't get any support from the general fund from the university. So if anything happens with this building, it's on us, meaning you, students, and us to solve the problem. We have a hurricane, a roof goes, it's reserves that are paying for these type of things. We don't go to the university. That's the way it's set up, just like the residence halls are as well. I think the Vice President Straka was here. They have hardy reserves, and those reserves are there to be able to take care of things at the university. And it's not like they don't get money into reserves every year, because they're doing the same thing I explained to you before. If there's open positions at the university, positions that I don't fill, that money comes back to the general fund, and so that's how their money builds. And again, it's not on purpose. It happens somewhat because of the nature of those things. So, but I don't want to refute. The senators have talked about the bond, and when it goes out, we have to make decisions about what we'll do with that money, and if we would use it towards an addition and some of those things.
And just in response, I just think that last week we talked about MAVRIK Adventures in terms of cutting the GA, and I kind of look at this in the same aspect. Obviously, MAVRIK Adventures doesn't have $3 million in their reserve. They don't have barely anything, if anything. But if we cut that GA, we're possibly cutting the MAVRIK Adventures, and I'm not saying we're going to cut everything in the CSU, but we could reduce the chance of having a new building, having a new facility by 2 maybe to 5 years just by doing this. Obviously my math is, I'm just estimating, but I do think kind of like what Senator Nowinski said is I do think the 1.2% decrease like they have proposed is a reasonable amount. Obviously if we do think that maybe they should use a little bit out of the reserves just to save a little bit of money for all of us, but in reality, guys, like we come here for school, we already know we're going to pay for student loans. This is the 1086 to 1045, that's 31 cents per credit hour. I would be willing to pay for something if it means that you know, maybe in my future years of being a student, if I get my doctorate, I might have an awesome facility for CSU or whatever it may be. I just think that, you know, if we allow them to keep doing the things that they do and we trust them, you know, hopefully they can spend that money for something that's going to be awesome for all students, and it's going to bring in students, and it's going to expand our university. So that's just all I have to say about that.
Just a reminder, let's keep our speaking points short, and with that, let's go to Quinn, Senator Roba.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a cap for this reserve? And so what is it?
You want to use
There's no cap for it? Like, so if it like gets to a certain point, like, there's like, you have to use it. Okay.
All right, Senator Zellmer.
I guess, so I was speaking with former students here, actually my dad, they voted to increase the CSU fee, and we are still paying that to this day, and I'm only 19, but my parents both paid this fee as well. So, as I stated earlier, I think I'm a little worried about the 5% because I do agree that their reserves is I wouldn't necessarily be way too much, but it is larger than everything else. But since it is student funded, the university won't chip in if it goes off the rocks. I am going to motion to amend it to 2% rather than 5%.
I'll second.
All right, now. All right, now we're gonna open discussion for the 2%. Senator Pospisil.
Okay, so the reason why I chose the 5% is because this budget has been budgeting for surplus instead of just having it be happy coincidence. And also with that, like I said, I don't think I said this, but there are other reserves for specific issues. This is just the student activities reserve. So this isn't the only pot of money that they have. Like I said, Senator Lana said and clarified that there are bonds, and we are currently up to renew that bond. If we do want an extension, so it doesn't go on the backs of the students. I mean, it does, but it isn't into their budget. So with this, they still would be growing their budget. I'm wondering why we haven't exactly cut everybody else's budgets. Like, just imagine if someone else budgeted to have a surplus of $300,000 just to put into a growing budget. So that's why I put that. It's not cutting anything. It's just it's balancing the budget to where it's supposed to be. So we're not frivolously just giving them $300,000 every year when they do have other sources of money that speak to your concerns, if that makes sense. So that is why I would oppose the -2 and stand at my -5%.
All right, Senator Moyne.
Yeah, just a question for clarification to land this. So you said that the bond that have like 6 million, right? If I'm right.
643,000 per year.
Okay.
Is what we're paying this fiscal year and up until it expires in 2022.
Yeah, and in addition to that, so what would happen if we don't use that money? Is it going to back to reserve, or it just goes to different departments?
So, I'm not sure I understand your question, but that money that's in the budget line is going to pay back a bond that we owe. So that money isn't going into any reserve. That's going directly to a bond payment for the next 3 years. And then I think the point that I was making was that when that bond payment is over, then there's going to be, between 2022 and fiscal year 2023, is it that $643,000 that students have been accustomed and acculturated to paying, it's not likely that money is going to just suddenly stop being asked for. It's more likely that money is going to be asked for to be used towards another project, as we've talked about. And so that money gets kind of freed up in 2022. Was the argument I was making.
Thank you.
Senator Erickson?
Senator Pospisil, I just have some questions for you because you keep saying that the CSU is trying to budget for a surplus, that they want money left over, when Mark, head of the CSU board, who put the budget together, just said we are not budgeting for surplus. The main thing that we are trying to do is make sure that we do not have a surplus. For the bond that keeps getting brought up, it doesn't expire until 2022, not next year, not the year after that, 2022. It keeps saying that it's most likely will be renewed. We do not know that for sure. We have to wait until that time comes. We don't know if the bond is going to get renewed or not. That could be $650,000 less that the students have to pay for, but forever, unless they get something else. But we don't know. We can't. And the concerns that for the operating reserve that keeps getting brought up. For what the operating reserve is used for, on the very back of our sheet, there's a 1, 2, 3 for why the operating reserve is there. Just reference it. Yeah.
Just a reminder, can we keep our arguments relevant to the one we're voting on right now, the 2% rather than the 5%?
Yeah, all of that was for 2%. I was commenting on her explanation on why.
Perfect. Senator Hoysa?
I'd like to address everyone in the room who's sitting like myself, who is not on the CSU board and who did not come up with or second this motion. Because I think I'm with a lot of you where when we saw the CSU budget presentation, we're like, yeah, that seems pretty good. They're asking for a decrease. We didn't really look into the numbers as that much. I'd like to thank the CSU board for doing their hard work and coming up with a budget, because like obviously we can't look into each thing and know. So they did that presentation for us. But I would also like to thank Senator Pospisil, because we are just also, the Senate is in charge of looking at these things and making sure that we actually approve what they're doing instead of just perhaps a bias, not saying that you are biased, but a CSU board that knows a lot more and is very passionate about the CSU, obviously they're going to want to give it more money. One thing though that Senator Erickson said, when you said they're not budgeting for a surplus, if they have a surplus every year consistently of hundreds of thousands of dollars, then you're budgeting for a surplus. But that's okay, like I understand that you are looking for a surplus, like I understand that. So I think that everyone in the room who is on both sides, who is very for the 1.2 or very for the 5%, we can be in the middle for 2% right now, and then hope for next year that people who come in are knowing, can understand more about what this exactly means for everybody, instead of just trying to understand really quickly tonight. But 2% I think would be a compromise that we could all hopefully agree on. And I would love to call to question if anyone would second.
Alright, so now we're gonna vote on the recommendation. We're gonna recommend the student union fee be at $1073 a credit and then banded at $257. Any dissent? Close the speakers list. Oh, Senator Pospisil? Okay, so we're opening up again. Now we're voting on closing the speakers list.
Technically, she can't call to question on a speaker. So what
Senator Robo?
I'd like to call the question.
Alright, so now we're gonna vote on closing the speakers list. So if you guys would like to close the speakers list. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and vote.
For the amendment
For the 2%, so this means we recommend the student union fee be at $1073 a credit. That is 2%. Yeah, the amendment. I'm sorry, let me clarify, it's for the amendment. So this is for the amendment that recommends the student union fee be at $1073 a credit, banded at $257.52 a year. All in favor?
Point of information, are we voting on the amendment to the amendment, so changing it to 2% instead of the 5%?
Yes, we are voting on the amendment. So if, okay.
All in favor? Any opposed? Oh, sorry. 2, all right. So amendment has passed. So now, we're gonna open question to 2% and then we're gonna move to vote.
Motion to move to a vote.
I miscalculated something.
The 2% reduction actually is 1078, not 1072. 2.5% reduction would have been 1072. So my bad, I'm sorry about that. I have too many different numbers written on my sheet.
2% or 2.5?
2% was what you were approving with voting, and that's 1078 is what that actually is.
Perfect, thank you.
Any dissent to moving on to voting? What? Any dissent to vote, moving on to voting? All right. Senator Hospital. All in favor? Of voting?
Voting?
All in favor of voting right now, please. Opposed? Okay, so now that passed, we're going to be moving on to a vote. So we're going to recommend this. So this is the recommending the student union fee be at $1078 a credit and ended at $258.72 a year. All in favor?
Can you raise them high, please?
All opposed? Any abstaining? So 24 voted all in favor, so the motion does pass. And now we will be moving on to technology fee. We're going to be moving on to technology fee. All right, now we have Ryan Schneider speaking on technology fee.
I just had I don't know if I'd call it a motion, just for the future budgets in terms of speaking twice. I know we had done that last week. I don't know if that stands for today. I don't know what the...
So that is up to interpretation of the speaker, the Roberts rules. So that would be something to discuss beforehand with the person presiding over the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker and Senate. Mark Johnson couldn't be here today. He had a prior commitment with a group that was going to northern Minnesota this week to fix up a summer camp. So he wasn't able to make it. He asked me to come up here and speak instead. We met with Senator of the Month, Landis, on Monday because he had some questions and concerns about a proposal for the tech fee increase of 50 cents. And he said that other senators had concerns as well, so I wanted to make some clarifications for you. One is the reserve, and I get that you really understand reserves by now, right? So we don't have a reserve. What we have is a carryover each year, but that doesn't accumulate. That's just the carryover. And we try to keep our carryover to about 10 or 15%. And the reason that we have a carryover is because although we try to budget as close as we can every year to zero, there are some unforeseen expenses that we have. And the biggest part of that is we group our purchases to all being together. So if I have a bunch of network equipment, or if we have classroom equipment, if we have computers for labs that we have to purchase, if we bundle those into getting the largest order as possible together, and then if we time that correctly, usually towards the end of the quarter, I can typically negotiate a bigger discount, and I can also sometimes negotiate trade-ins and additional academic discounts as well. So it really is hard to really narrow in on exactly what our expenses are going to be for the year. Sometimes software renewals and support renewals come in a lot more than what we anticipated. So we do like to have a carryover, not necessarily a reserve, but a carryover. So a lot of it too might be timing. If I have to purchase $500,000 worth of, say, network equipment or storage, sometimes if I do that purchase before the end of the fiscal year, I can leverage some trade-ins and discounts. But sometimes I don't have matching funds on the general fund side, so we have to carry that over to the next fiscal year and do the purchase after July 1st. So it looks like we're carrying over, but we're actually spending that. So some of it is timing. If you refer to the sheet that in the graphs that I had before, that's an explanation for that. So that's a reserve. Second question is, why did we come back after 2 weeks after saying that we didn't recommend increase to the tech fee and asked for a 50-cent increase 2 weeks later? What we did was, I learned, and Mark learned too, in this meeting that the actual limit for the tech fee had been increased by the Board of Trustees. We didn't hear about that beforehand. But what Mark did ask for when he was asked what our recommendation was, at the time we thought that we were capped, so Mark said that he hopes that we can get support to go back to the board to increase the tech fee beyond $10 per credit, because most of our sister schools are also capped out at $10, and we keep on getting demands to do more technology, more support, improvements. We still have our ongoing costs all the time, but we keep on being asked to do more. Student success, some departments can apply some staffing for that, but a lot of times they also need software and mobile apps and stuff like that to support it as well. Just this afternoon, we had 3 hours worth of meetings on the sports dome to try and figure out how to get fiber optic cable there, security cameras, card access, and you wouldn't even really think that having a slab of turf and a bubble on it would need a lot of technology, but we're continually asked to do more. So what we did was we went back to the Student Tech Fee Committee and we asked them if they supported an increase now that the cap had been raised, and they did, and that was this presentation that we did to you. And this is some of the things that they said, if we had more money, here's what we'd like to do. Part of it was improve our wireless network. For some students, it's very adequate. For other students, they say it doesn't hardly work at all. And we know that we have to do quite a bit of investments down the road in the near future to get beyond the 1 gig per second boundary. We want to get to 5 gigabits per second, and then we have to replace not only the access points that are in the corner, but we have to do the whole infrastructure as well. So they said, let's fix it now. Let's raise it to fix it now. Some other things that we would use a 50-cent increase for is a new mobile app that we moved the purchases to develop. Some new tools for online learners, increase the number of informal learning spaces that we have around campus, and classroom upgrades. Now we do have telepresence that is end of life, and that's in Edina here on campus. We have 2 rooms, and one's at Normandale, and that's going to be decommissioned. But we do have to come up with something else to replace those rooms because they are end of life. So we want to get that equipment replaced before it breaks down. So that was the second part. The third one is, what is the exact amount? We are requesting 50 cents, which is a 5% increase in the tech fee. And I asked Steve Smith, our comptroller, exactly what that would be. And this current fiscal year, it's $3,080,000. And a 5% increase, after you factor in those that don't have to pay tech fee and those that don't pay the tech fee, that would bring in a projected $3.2 million. So that's an increase of about $120,000 a year. And that also reflects, because of the new board policy where students that go to Normandale don't have to pay the tech fee to us, they actually pay it to Normandale. that came out to be a little bit less than what we thought it was gonna be. That's gonna be about a $24,000 impact. So it is gonna be about a $120,000 increase for next year. So with that, I'll stand for questions if you have any more questions or concerns.
Senator Landis?
Yeah, could you go back and clarify a little bit? You talked about having a meeting about putting technology fee in the sports dome. Was that money not budgeted when we had a sports dome referendum in for that project, or is that money coming from existing tech fees and to implement that? Is that going on to tech fees? Could you just clarify?
There is a budget for some technology out there, but we need to figure out a way to get fiber optic cable out there, which I don't think they allowed any money for that. And we also have to add some things like security cameras out there that we found out weren't in the budget. And card access is going to be included in there, but it's the ongoing things too. Like for example, when we get requests to have streaming events out there, we have to get the networking equipment out there that will be able to plug in the cameras so that we can televise and stream those sports. And those events that are out there.
So to clarify, that there will be additional costs to it coming out of tech fee that weren't budgeted.
Yeah, in some cases when you build a building, like clinical science building, money is included in the building project for some technology, but it's not ongoing, it's just a one-time. And typically that reverts back to a combination of the college or the department and tech fee to support that ongoing.
Clarify that.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you. Is there any dissent to approving the 2% increase? See none, we're gonna go on to a vote. All in favor? Sixteen. All opposed? Any abstaining? All right, perfect. Now we're gonna move on. So now the motion has passed, and we will be moving on to student health services. So they're remaining at a flat rate. Is there any dissent? See none, we're gonna move on to a vote. All in favor? All right, all opposed? Any abstaining?
I'm not voting, but I have something else next after this vote passes.
Madam Vice President, can I just recommend a motion in support of maintaining the outdoor campus rec facility fee as exists, the $250 per credit hour, just so we can reflect that in the documents that get forwarded to the President.
Yes.
I'd like to mention what John said to support the maintenance fee for that.
Second.
So now we're gonna open discussion on that.
I can just talk about it really quick. So if you can recall, that's the fee that Todd presented. That's the one that pays for our outdoor campus rec. It was a 20-year fee. It doesn't change. You need to pay it off. I think there's 10 years left on it. But yeah, it's just nice to have that support from the students.
So I see no dissent. Now we're gonna move on to a vote. All in favor? All opposed? Any abstaining? So it passes. Now we're gonna move on to the Constitution Committee. And I'm gonna yield to Andrew Trenny to explain the new bylaw and amendment changes.
Hi, I don't know the process for which, is it 2 weeks?
This would be considered a first read of the proposed amendment, and then it would sit for about next week in old business.
So our first change, as of right now, is reflected on the agenda. It basically will allow ethics and standards to petition the Senate for removal of a senator. Previously, they could not do that. We ruled that they cannot remove senators either. So this just allows some leeway to remove senators as an appropriate sanction. So that's that first bylaw change. And then the second one is we only change one word from shall to may. This basically says you may be compensated. Obviously, you can refuse your stipend. Many of you have in this room. Some of you didn't fill out the paperwork. I'm not going to look at anyone. So, but that just allows you guys to refuse or not take your stipend, and anyone, two executives included. I guess it doesn't include the executives in this one. And then the third proposed bylaw amendment is Kayla Erickson's idea. It was to create a MAV textbook reserve coordinator. And I'm sure she has some changes to highlight when we talk about it next week or today. No, we're good. But yeah, so that just basically creates a new person. It removes the function from academic affairs coordinator and makes it a new position. And it expands the bookstore advisory committee's membership by 4. So are there any questions? Any?
Senator Hoysa.
Hey, so the petition from the Ethics and Standards Committee, is that, would it have to be a certain percent, like a certain number of people on the committee, and then after that, would they petition like at a Senate meeting?
Yeah, so right now, I think we wrote in there somewhere that it's there's 5 or 6 people on the committee. They had quorum when they removed one previous senator, and it was 4. So we just said 4 up in petition, and then it would come here, the reasons why, a recommendation to remove, and it would take 2/3.
And we can still vote.
Are there any further questions?
Senator Landis.
I'm just a little uncertain about this change in the second, the may be compensated. Is that language intended in case a future Senate decides to give money back in their budgets? Is that the idea, so that you don't have to change too much?
Yeah, so the idea is, we didn't feel like we wanted to propose to cut your stipends. You guys can amend it to do that. We just said we changed one word to allow you guys to refuse your stipends, and it would carry forward into the budget as what you guys did at the budget meeting. And Senator Zellmer can attest to that.
Yeah, there's just what we talked about in the meeting is, although like at the budget meeting we all talked about, we don't necessarily need senator stipends. You brought out that it's not enough, and if it needs to be enough, then we need to increase it dramatically. What we talked about when Ethics and Standards came to us about our prior decision about removing a senator, they spoke about how they didn't have many, I guess, tools in their toolbox to, per se, I don't want to say punish, but to give out reprimands for either like missing office hours, repetitive times, other than removing. And the stipend was one of the ways they could do that. So they could take away your stipend. So if you were not doing your office hours a consecutive amount of times, which were not set, then they could say, okay, you're not going to get your stipend, but they would still remain on the Senate. So the reason that we decided to leave it in the Constitution was not only, as Andrew brought up, but also because that's one of the ways that they can ensure, other than just sending people straight here and then needing to see if they're going to get removed. So that's why we left it, and you guys, we will talk about it next week, whether or not we want to amend it or whatnot. I do recommend that we talk about it outside as well, so then it's not as much of a time-consuming thing. But the reason we left it in, and we also think that we should still look towards giving out senator stipends, is because of that reason of they need something to be able to use as leverage, I guess. But that's the comment.
And just to further add, we did find during our meeting, we did talk about that removing senator stipends does now deregulate ethics and standards. There's no purpose for it. Because as of right now, without this proposed change, they cannot remove senators. So there's no point.
Senator Moy.
Yes, so addition to that, we'd like to, addition to Emma Zellmer's and Chair Andrew's one, so we'd like to add that we left it because we saw that there are also more budget, like it's like $5,000 for the senators' stipends, but we saw that it was still left, still no money, so that's why we just left that.
Sorry if I may. To expand on that, last year they budgeted for $5,000. In last semester, only $1,400 was taken, and that's due to turnover. It's also due to people not filling out paperwork, or if people just didn't want to take it. So what we saw is that we could necessarily still budget with it because we did have a leftover even after they budgeted for it.
Any further questions? All right, thank you. We will now be moving on to announcements.
I have two announcements. One, I'd like to say happy birthday to Senator Zellmer. And my second announcement, something that I meant to mention during my officer report but forgot. So I had sent out an email late last week regarding a petition for removal of the Academic Affairs Coordinator and Ethics Standards Chair, Senator Ramsey, because in my email I had described that they had made it clear that they were not intending to come to any more student government events, you could say, or convene any more of those meetings. And so I just feel that with the time still left in our term, and especially the great work that I've seen from Academic Affairs, something that I think this year has been probably the best that I've seen in my 3 years in student government. I was just hoping that, you know, we could get someone new in there so we could still have these meetings and have work being done. With that, there weren't enough signatures for that petition to go forward at this meeting. That doesn't mean that, you know, that still can't happen. That can still be a process because there still is a good amount of time left in this term. With that, I know that in the email that Senator Ramsey sent, they made it very clear that no one else could convene the commission or the academic affairs meeting. While in that, the Constitution, that is correct. I will still be hosting an academic affairs meeting after this. I know I'm not the convener, but I would really hope that the people on the committee would attend regardless, just because it is, you know, one of the two important committees in this Senate. So I will be in that conference room after this meeting, and I hope to see the Academic Affairs Committee there. I yield.
All right. Senator Volk.
Just in terms of athletics, we have a big hockey game this Saturday against Bowling Green. It's for the conference championship, so you guys aren't doing nothing on a Saturday. If you've never been to a Division I hockey game, check it out, because we might be throwing some confetti and stuff for a conference championship. So.
Senator Sampson.
So this is from Student United. There is an opening if you want to be on the Board of Trustees. You would have to apply, and then you'll be recommended to the Minnesota governor to join the Board of Trustees. The link is on our Facebook, Student United MSU Mankato. And the second announcement is this Saturday is African Night. You all are invited. You can get your boarding passes for me $10. You don't have to be African to come. But yeah, I have first class tickets if you guys want.
Senator Gardner.
I have an announcement about MAVRIK Adventures. We have a hike coming up at the Flandreau State Park on March 29th. It's from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And there's 2 vans that we've rented, and hopefully we will be getting registration up soon.
Yes, it's up and running.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm just gonna pass some flyers out. You guys can pass them down.
All right, John, do you have anything else?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple of things. As a reminder, last week you approved a recommendation of a 4.9% increase to the student activity fee. Please remember that in order to have a vote be effective, whether it's an up vote or a down vote, we need a 10% threshold of the non-extended student body to vote in that election. So please be sure and talk to your constituents, especially those who may be impacted by programs that are supported by the student activity fee, and encourage them to vote on that April 9th election day. So that is very, very, very important. Also, I believe, Madam Vice President, you'll be seeing a request from Student Activities staff member Emmy Mink to present to the Senate next week. There are going to be some changes to the recognized student organization re-recognition process that she will be bringing just to present to the Senate. So some positive changes that I think will make things a little bit more seamless for student organizations when it comes to being recognized in the fall. So just a couple of things to look forward to there. And then also a reminder, I didn't hear it announced, but when does the application for Senate Speaker close? When will that close?
It's going to close next Tuesday at noon.
Next Tuesday at noon. So anybody who is interested in running for the vacancy at the Speaker, please be sure they're encouraged to complete it by noon next Tuesday.
Senator Kenton.
So we are gonna be having a student affairs meeting after this.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure when the meeting was gonna end, so I was just gonna like discuss that, but we are gonna have a meeting.
All right, sounds good. Senator Erickson.
Hi, so me and lovely Senator Sampson over there, we're part of an advocacy project on campus to just explore our tobacco policy. But the main thing that we're seeking right now is students for a photo voice study. It's really interesting if anyone's into pictures, that kind of art. We're asking for 40 students to participate. We give you a disposable camera, and we ask you to just go around campus, seeing how our tobacco policy, tobacco may affect your life here. You will receive a $15 Amazon gift card, and we will be providing free food at the meeting. If anyone's interested, I do have these little cards pinned out. Annabelle has a nice, lovely, big flyer. Yeah, thank you.
Senator Garten.
So on behalf of Elections Commission, we just want to make an announcement that you may have been seeing signs up in the CSU or in other academic. Oh, my bad. Sorry, I was not here for your. Never mind.
All right, we're gonna end with any more announcements. Sorry.
Thank you, students, for your support of technology and helping to improve it and use it too. One final thing that you're going to get probably on Friday from the Executive Committee is a list of priorities. And these are the things that we're going to be working on over the next year. So this document will go to the students for feedback and a vote. If there's any changes, please give them to Senator Moyne or Senator Moyne. Either one of those two, and they'll be added to the list. You're going to be voting on that over the next couple of meetings. I'm not sure when it'll be scheduled, but you'll be voting on that. That same document will also go to the Technology Roundtable for feedback and a vote. And that'll wrap up our Technique Committee work for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna end with roll call. Senator Bigg. Senator Erickson. Here. Senator Moy. Trexie. Senator Ramsey. Senator Schmidt. Here. Senator Edavicic.
Yep.
Senator Wosu.
Here.
Senator Andrade. Senator Bejarano. Here. Senator Landis.
Here.
Senator Nowinski. Here. Senator Oberati.
Yeah.
Senator Zilwall. Here. Senator O'Caro. Here. Senator Christensen. Here. Senator Kinten.
Here.
Senator Pospisil. Here. Senator Chaiti. Here. Senator Sajal.
Here.
Senator Dahl.
Here.
Senator Garten. Here. Senator Sampson. Here. Senator Moyne.
Here.
Senator Mitchell. Senator Ray. Senator Zelmer. Here. Senator Hoyseth. Here. Senator Albright. Here. Senator Medina. Here. President Cohen. Here.
Good job, guys.
We turned it on late, but we turned it on.
Yeah, it's true. I have a question.
Make sure I appreciate everything. Meeting, so I couldn't just answer.
Running for no. I don't think I am. Okay. Okay. You are 11.